Christina Cornell, a news reporter with Channel 5, and I'm outside of the Wainwright building. In just a few minutes inside of the Wainwright building, we'll hear from State Auditor Scott Fitzpatrick, who will share his audit report on Kim Gardner and her time with the Circuit Attorney's Office. Again, we'll hear from Scott Fitzpatrick at any moment. Make sure to stick with us. I'm Christina Cornell, 5 on your side. Christina Cornell, a news reporter with Channel 5, and I'm outside of the Wainwright building. In just a few minutes inside of the Wainwright building, we'll hear from State Auditor Scott Fitzpatrick, who will share his audit report on Kim Gardner and her time with the Circuit Attorney's Office. Again, we'll hear from Scott Fitzpatrick at any moment. Make sure to stick with us. I'm Christina Cornell, 5 on your side. Good afternoon. I'm Justina Cornell, a news reporter with Channel 5, and I'm outside of the Wainwright building. And in just a few minutes, we'll have a news conference with State Auditor Scott Fitzpatrick, who will share his audit report on former Circuit Attorney Kim Gardner and her time in the Circuit Attorney's office. Now let's take you inside as that news conference will begin. afternoon. I'm Justina Cornell, a news reporter with Channel 5, and I'm outside of the Wainwright building. And in just a few minutes, we'll have a news conference with State Auditor Scott Fitzpatrick, who will share his audit report on former Circuit Attorney Kim Gardner and her time in the Circuit Attorney's office. Now let's take you inside as that news conference will begin.
You guys ready? Okay. A rudderless ship of chaos. Those were the powerful words chosen by Judge Michael Noble in April of 2023 to describe the St. Louis Circuit Attorney's Office under Kim Gardner's leadership. This is the day that he held Gardner in indirect criminal contempt for her failure to appear in court. What he knew at that time was that Gardner had displayed disdain and disrespect for the judicial process. What Judge Noble did not know was that on the very day Gardner should have been preparing to be in his classroom, she instead chose to spend her time across town in a classroom. Instead of focusing her full attention on the job taxpayers were paying her to do, a job vital to keeping criminals off the street and protecting the public, her priority was her nursing certification. While this moment in court is a singular incident, it's also a microcosm of the dysfunction that spread throughout the Circuit Attorney's Office during the time Kim Gardner was in charge. State law is very clear that the Circuit Attorney and the employees of the Circuit Attorney's Office are to dedicate their full time and energy to the discharge of their official duties. It's also very clear that pursuing a nursing certificate in no way falls under the description of official duties. And Kim Gardner, her repeated choices to prioritize her personal pursuits over the duties she was elected to perform caused catastrophic damage not only to the office, but also to the safety and well-being of the people of St. Louis. This audit was never meant to be an indictment of Gardner personally, but the facts and the numbers don't lie. When you look at the operations of the office before she was there and then immediately after she resigned, and then compare that performance to her time in office, it becomes obvious the ship wasn't just rudderless with Kim Gardner at the helm, it was sinking. This report proves that under Gardner's watch, the Circuit Attorney's Office failed to do its job efficiently and effectively, and it lacked necessary oversight and staffing. These failures led to case times being extended, fewer cases being prosecuted, and it prolonged the time victims and defendants had to wait for justice if they received it at all. Our report goes into great detail on how the office experienced a decline in the number of cases referred, filed, and closed while Kim Gardner was in office. At the same time, case volume was decreasing. The time to process those cases increased significantly. The numbers paint a sobering picture about the inefficiency of the office. Overall, the Circuit Attorney's Office refused approximately 59% of referred cases during Gardner's administration. This number represents an increase of approximately 40% from the prior administration. And it is also in stark contrast to the percentage seen with Circuit Attorney Gabe Gore, which is only 40% of cases refused. When we look specifically at felony cases, Gardner's office refused an average of approximately 56% of felony cases referred during her tenure. Compare that to the previous administration's average of only 42% and the current administration's average of approximately 38%. The report highlights how the numbers of cases filed by the Circuit Attorney's Office decreased from an average of 4,666 cases per year during the prior administration to only 2,529 cases per year during Gardner's tenure. That's a decrease of 46%. Additionally, it took personnel under Gardner approximately 463 days to dispose of a case. That's an increase of 58% compared to the previous administration's average of 293 days, and it's more than 3 times as long as the average of the 142 days for case disposition under Circuit Attorney Gabe Gore in his first year. In addition, the Circuit Attorney's Office only disposed of roughly 50% of felony cases within 14 months of case filing, which is far short of the standard of 95%, which is recommended by the Missouri Supreme Court. Another number that jumps out when you're reviewing this report is 6,700. That's the approximate number of cases referred by law enforcement that were never even entered into the Circuit Attorney's Office case management system. When a case isn't entered into the system, there's never a charging decision is never able to be made. And without a charging decision, a case can't proceed at all. By May of 2023, there were approximately 6,700 cases referred by law enforcement that were in the email inboxes of the Circuit Attorney's Office waiting to be processed. This is a shocking number of cases that have never even been looked at by prosecutors, and it further illustrates Kim Gardner's disastrous job performance as Circuit Attorney. I do want to note that when we finally spoke to Ms. Gardner, she placed the blame on the COVID-19 pandemic for the decline in office performance. But if you look at the numbers, you'll see the decline in most areas of the office began prior to the pandemic, and it did not stop after the pandemic receded. Instead, that downward slide continued. Our interviews of more than 20 staff attorneys found over half of them felt their workload was too large or overwhelming. This failure to properly manage staff and their workloads led to a precipitous drop in the number of employees in the Circuit Attorney's Office. When Kim Gardner began her term, she had 141 employees in her office. By the time of her resignation in 2023, her office had declined by 37% to only 89 employees. To make matters worse, a significant number of legal staff left during Gardner's time there. From the day she took over to the day she left, her legal staff declined by 38% from 94 to 58. The drop in attorneys was even more dramatic, a 55% decrease from 53 to 24 attorneys. The good news is the current administration has been able to reverse this trend, increasing the office's legal staff to 73, including 44 attorneys. We looked at a lot of indicators, and they all told us the same thing. Under Kim Gardner's leadership, the Circuit Attorney's Office was becoming less and less effective at fulfilling its purpose. With a failure as complete as this one, of course, there's more than one factor that contributed to the office's decline, but in my view, the driving force was Kim Gardner's failure to make her job as Circuit Attorney her top priority. I've already mentioned the day she decided being in a classroom was more important than being in a courtroom, but that was just one of many days. We subpoenaed her student records from St. Louis University, and a review of her clinical hours showed there were 40 separate instances of Gardner completing her clinical classwork during normal business hours for the Circuit Attorney's Office. In total, we found 29 full days and 11 half days when she used working hours not to advance the mission of her office, but to advance her own secondary career. That adds up to 34 and a half working days, or approximately 7 weeks she spent away from her duties as the Circuit Attorney to pursue her nursing certification. I should also point out that Kim Gardner defended her actions when we talked to her by saying she was trying to improve the office and bring mental health awareness to the Circuit Attorney's Office. This is an obviously ridiculous explanation, and it's clear her schooling was not for the benefit of her office, but instead was for her own personal gain. This choice she made to put her focus on something other than the duties she was elected to perform not only is in direct conflict with her statutory obligations, it also led to the contempt of court charge and almost certainly was a key factor in the inefficient handling of cases and the excessive employee turnover in her office. Even more importantly, her neglect of her duties made it incredibly difficult for her office to act in the best interest of defendants, victims, and the citizens of the city of St. Louis. Beyond the issues we identified that contributed to the decline of the office, our audit report also found several other areas of concern that need to be addressed. We found that Kim Gardner misused public funds when she had the office reimburse her for $6,688 for her own personal legal expenses, and $5,004 of this total was resolved by the United States Attorney's Office, which had Gardner accept responsibility for her actions by signing a diversion agreement. But our report also notes Gardner improperly directed the office to reimburse her for two payments totaling $1,684 to the Missouri Supreme Court for fees associated with the petition for quo warranto filed by the Missouri Attorney General's office. These were also public dollars that were misused by Kim Gardner. We also found the office's contingency account is maintained outside the city's treasury in violation of state law. During the audit period, Kim Gardner's office made $58,482 in disbursements from that account that were not allowed by state law. Keep in mind the contingency account is supposed to be used to pay for expenses associated with bringing in witnesses from out of state and the costs associated with prosecuting defendants. Instead, Gardner's office was using these funds for things like hiring a DJ, renting party locations, buying chili cook-off supplies, having a car detailed, and paying late fees and interest charges on their credit cards. There's no question these funds should have been used to prosecute, not to party, and certainly not to celebrate at the same time the office was imploding. Our audit report also found a failure of the office to solicit bids or proposals for goods and services as required by law, and the failure to maintain documentation to support procurement decisions. The audit identified 11 Circuit Attorney's Office vendors that provided services during the audit period that should have been competitively procured but were not. These vendors were paid approximately $2 million. Other findings include accounting control weaknesses, a failure to maintain a complete and accurate seized property inventory listing, lacking procedures to ensure employees return office property and equipment upon termination as required by policy, and insufficient controls and procedures to limit CaseNet access in accordance with court operating rules. Those represent the majority of the findings in our report, but I encourage everyone to take the time to read through the entire report because it contains many more additional details that can be covered in a press conference. I'm extremely proud of the time and effort my staff put into this audit. I'm also proud of their dedication to truth and transparency. The truth is, they did their work while facing innumerable obstructions and obstacles. From day one in 2021, before I was even the state auditor, Kim Gardner acted to prevent this audit from taking place. At the start, she required all requests for records from our office be made to the first assistant circuit attorney and later an outside attorney paid for by city taxpayers. Everyone we contacted with their office repeatedly ignored or delayed responding to requests for the next 2 years. And even when subpoenaed, they provided only partial responses. To make the process even more difficult, Gardner's office also provided limited information, denied on-site access needed to conduct interviews and perform audit work, and unnecessarily redacted documentation to the point of making it unusable. Shortly after I took office in January 2023, I made it a priority to expedite our work and get the audit on track for completion. We had to issue numerous subpoenas, and we were even prepared to petition the court to enforce a subpoena that was ignored the day she abruptly resigned. But her resignation was not going to dissuade us from completing our work, nor was her disappearance from the public eye going to keep us from getting the answers the people of St. Louis deserved. For those of you who were here in this room with me in May of last year, you're well aware that Kim Gardner avoided providing testimony to our auditors and then evaded service for months after being subpoenaed. I said at the time we would make sure Kim Gardner is held accountable and that she answers for her time as circuit attorney. And while it took extraordinary effort to get here, that's what we've done. And let me say thank you to current Circuit Attorney Gabe Gore. It was only when he took over in May of 2023 that we finally gained full access to documents, personnel, and were able to work on site for the first time. Not only has Circuit Attorney Gore quickly improved the performance of the office, he's also acted in good faith and with full transparency in all of our dealings with him. I know this report is focused on the issues the office had before his time in office, but I think it can also provide a roadmap for him to follow as he moves forward. I encourage him and everyone in his office to thoroughly review our recommendations and put them into place as soon as possible. When combined with the good work he's already doing, these improvements can make the St. Louis Circuit Attorney's Office even more effective at keeping dangerous criminals off the streets and making the city of St. Louis a safer place to live and work. It's my sincere hope that today will once and for all close a dark chapter in the history of St. Louis, and that the early progress we've seen is a sign of good things to come for the people of this great city. Thank you, and I will take any questions.
You mentioned in your report about misuse of city taxpayer money and also sabotaging this office. Will any criminal charges be filed against Ms. Gardner?
Well, we're not the prosecutor, so we don't have the authority to make charging decisions. Obviously, the U.S. Attorney's Office has already has already looked at some of this stuff and has gotten her to enter a diversion agreement, and she's repaid a little over $5,000 that was inappropriately paid to her or reimbursed to her. But ultimately, charging decisions are made by the prosecutors, and we're here to support them if they choose to take issue with any of the things in the report.
When was the last time you spoke to Kim Gardner?
I did not personally speak to her. Our auditors, I believe, interviewed her in June. I think that's roughly the time frame that we spoke to her, June or July. Does that sound about right? So it was mid to late summer.
Bouncing off that, how were you able to track her down? She's been incredibly hard to find. Was it through an attorney, or was it through her nursing, or can you tell us about that?
So when we issued the subpoena to St. Louis University for her nursing school records, they notified her of that, and she had an attorney representing her object to them complying with that subpoena. And once we finally had an attorney that was representing her, we were able to serve him the subpoena on her behalf, and that was how we were able to finally locate her.
Sorry. What did you learn from Kim Gardner when she did come in to sit down for an interview? You mentioned some of the excuses she gave, but was there anything new that you learned?
Well, I mean, we really wanted her to answer for the total collapse of the office during her time there, and there weren't really a lot of answers. We wanted to give her the opportunity to explain herself, and if she had any good reasons for almost 50% drop in the number of cases filed per year, if she had a reason why it took almost 3 times as long as it's taking Gabe Gore to dispose of cases, why she wasn't able to dispose of anywhere close to the 95% of felony cases in 14 months as recommended by the Supreme Court. The whole thing is about, and I said this in May when we were trying to find her, this is an opportunity for her to tell her side of the story. And we wanted to make sure anytime you're doing an audit of an entity, you want to make sure that the person in charge of that entity who's the subject of that audit has the opportunity to weigh in on the things that we're questioning, and that was what we did.
The expenditures towards parties, chili cook-offs, things like that, was any of that parties outside the office, personal parties, personal expenses?
It appeared that the expenses were for the office, but that is a restricted fund that's only allowed to be used for costs associated with prosecuting cases, which include bringing in witnesses from out of state and actually prosecuting people that have been charged with crimes. And there's no way to draw a line between a DJ and going to court to prosecute somebody charging crimes. There's
But it's in your report. Do you think that she should be disbarred?
Well, listen, I think that I think that there's a process for disbarment. I'm not involved in that process, and I think she's a really bad circuit attorney. I think the record reflects that. At the very least, I think she made some decisions that certainly were worthy of disciplinary action. But I'm not an attorney, and I'm not an expert in what rises to the level of disbarment. From a layman's point of view, I could certainly see how making that case would be something a lot of people would do. But again, I'm not a subject matter expert on disbarment and the standards for that.
What do you make of the current Circuit Attorney Gore's response to some of the specific recommendations that you have made, since he's now in charge of the office and cleaning up some of those accounting controls, password controls, etc.?
Yeah, Circuit Attorney Gore's responses to some of the findings were less agreeable than I expected them to be. We responded in the report and gave our comments and our thoughts on his his response to the findings, and each of the findings where he didn't completely agree with us. And so I would just point you to the auditor's comments at the end of each of the audit findings, and that would be my just kind of official response to anything that they said in their response.
You know, one of his concerns was the breadth of the audit, and you certainly did a lot of work analyzing caseloads and things like that, which is not something I've seen in an audit before. So I guess I'm curious why you felt that the breadth of this audit was necessary, and how do you feel it kind of fits in state law authorizing that audit?
Well, we're authorized by state law to conduct performance audits, and that's what this was. It was a performance audit. It was requested by the Board of Aldermen, and we were following on that request and performing a very deep analysis and audit of the office. And the reason is, nobody can make the case otherwise. The Circuit Attorney's Office is arguably, when the Circuit Attorney is doing a really bad job, it becomes the most important elected position in city government, I think. And so because of the disaster that had occurred in the office and the overall impact that it's had on the city, not just from crime, but the economic consequences of failure to prosecute cases, we wanted to give our best effort at highlighting and determining what caused the total collapse of the office, and basically provide a roadmap of what happened so that Circuit Attorney Gore and whoever succeeds him in office can make sure that it doesn't happen again. And that was the reason we did it. It was an in-depth audit. We did do a lot more work in the Circuit Attorney's Office than we would in some other instances, but it's an important office, and a failure to execute in that office is really damaging to the city.
Based on this audit, are you interested in looking at other prosecuting attorney's office, or kind of what has this audit encouraged you to do maybe in other cases?
Well, we look at every county in the state that doesn't have its own auditor, which is about 100 of them on a 4 to 8 year cycle. And as part of that, we do work in the prosecuting attorney's office in each of those counties. And there are findings in those audits as well. However, we've never seen anything. I've only been here 2 years, but I don't recall hearing of anything coming out of the auditor's office where there was a prosecutor's office that was so dysfunctional and was doing such a bad job at performing its basic duties as this one. And so we do look at prosecutors' offices on every year as a regular course of business for our office.
You've never seen anything like this?
I have not. We have people that have been in the office a lot longer than I have, and they have not, in the course of this audit, said something to the effect of, oh, this reminds me of the audit of so-and-so prosecutor of 1996 or anything like that. So I would say that this is a pretty unique situation that we've encountered.
The increase of caseloads or cases that were rejected, was that tied at all to the lack of staff and the staff being overworked, or was there another reason why they were rejecting cases?
Well, I would say that the staffing challenges probably inevitably led to some charging decisions being made the way they were. And obviously it's 6,700 cases that had been referred to them that were just sitting in their email accounts that they hadn't even looked at. So staffing was obviously a big part of that. But also, I mean, Kim Gardner had made many public statements to the effect of, she was not going to make charging decisions that were less aggressive than a lot of her predecessors had made. So I think you can take her public statements regarding how she wanted to run the office and her criminal justice approach to being a prosecutor kind of in context with the stats that are in the report.
While she was in office, did any employees come forward and voice concerns about how things were being run?
I don't recall. This audit has been going on since before I was even the auditor. So I don't recall if there were any internal whistleblower situations that came up during the audit, because it's been going on for almost 4 years. I can tell you that we did speak to over 20 of the attorneys in the office, and that they, a majority of them felt like their caseload was way more than they could handle and was overwhelming. So We did talk to the office, but I can't say for sure if we ever had any whistleblower complaints during the course of the audit, because I wasn't even there for the first 2 years of it.
Do you think Kim Gardner owes the city and the state an apology?
I think she definitely owes the citizens of St. Louis who paid her and put her in office an apology. Yeah, she failed to do her job. She willfully chose to pursue education in an unrelated field while the circuit attorney's office was burning to the ground, and was literally at her clinicals on the same day that she was held in indirect criminal contempt by Judge Noble for failing to show up to court. So, I mean, she owes somebody an apology, and I would say she should start with the voters and the citizens of the city of St. Louis.
You've talked a lot about how it was during her tenure that there were these staffing issues and that led to presumably a lot of the caseload, metrics, those kind of things. Was there one thing as you were listening to these attorneys talk that you think ultimately led to some of this? The circuit attorney herself could be a problem, but the office can function if there's staff. What do you think it was about this office that led all of this to happen?
Well, you have to have, in any organization, you have to have somebody leading it. And she was not leading it. And if I recall correctly, I mean, some of the interviews that we did indicated that she was also very much wanting to make all the decisions. And so she was spending a lot of time not doing her job and also wanted to make a bunch of decisions. And instead of delegating those decisions, she was probably creating a significant bottleneck within the office that would have made it hard for people to do their jobs, right? If they can't get a decision on something, how are they supposed to proceed with knowing how to do their job? So there were a lot of things that happened, and every governmental entity that I know of experienced staffing challenges, as well as private entities experienced staffing challenges during COVID. And I'm sure that the circuit attorney's office wasn't immune to that, but it wasn't unique to the circuit attorney's office. It was something that every organization was dealing with, and people had to figure out how to overcome it, right? You had to figure out how to recruit. You had to figure out how to get your pay in line with the market, whatever. You had to figure out how to navigate the challenges that came with COVID. It was not an excuse to stop working. It was not an excuse to just throw your hands up and say, well, we can't do anything now. So I don't know if that answers your question, but.
How much extra time did the obfuscation add to this audit, and then how much extra cost did that extra time add?
I don't know the cost, the cost overage. The city was provided an estimate of the total cost of this audit like 6 years ago. So, I don't have that number off the top of my head with me. I can tell you that it costs more because of the time we had to spend fighting with Kim Gardner, her appointed outside counsel, and issuing subpoenas and trying to hire process servers and a private investigator that we had to engage with to try to find her before we eventually got connected with her through an attorney. So there were a lot of costs that were over and above what was originally anticipated. As far as the time goes, I would say even a very in-depth performance audit like this, from start to finish, should never really take more than 12 months or so of an office this size. And here we are, almost 4 years in. So, that gives you an idea of the delay.
Did any staff, you mentioned before, talk about the uniqueness of this case for prosecutors, the audited prosecutors, but in terms of just the resistance that you guys saw, the lack of cooperation from Gardner, did anyone in the office, a lot of experience, share maybe that was unique, the amount of pushback you guys received?
In my office? Or are you talking about in the circuit attorney's
just
office?
Like how Kim Gardner was refusing to work with
Yeah.
you guys.
You're asking if anybody in the state auditor's office said that, or if anybody in the circuit attorney's office said that?
The state auditor's office.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We talked regularly about how long the audit was taking, what we needed to do to get it back on track, how unusual it was, the level of resistance we were experiencing, and the means by which we had to take to try to locate her. I don't know if a state auditor has ever issued a public call for help at finding somebody before, but I would venture to guess that they probably have not. Have they, Kelly, in your time here? Nope. So that was a first, and so yeah, it was pretty unprecedented in terms of not being able to get anybody to talk to us.
What would you say to people who would ask if you would make the same effort if this person wasn't Kim Gardner, such a controversial figure among a public, private, whatever, that this was solely because she was Kim Gardner, a liberal woman, black prosecutor?
Well, the only reason Kim Gardner is like a hot button or big subject is because of how terrible of a job she did as circuit attorney. So if she was doing a great job, then nobody would be, would be even asking that question, I don't think. And, the reality is, and the facts are in the report, I mean, the office was being run pretty well before she was there, and it's had a pretty rapid turnaround under Gabe Gore. So, the data just doesn't support that there was anything other than a need to get to the bottom of what was going wrong in the circuit attorney's office and let the public know, but also let future circuit attorneys know what not to do when they take over.
Have you shared this audit with Kim Gardner, and has she responded?
We've shared it with the circuit attorney's office. I don't know that Kim has gotten a copy of it before. They generally get it the morning that it's going to be going out. So I'm not sure if she was personally on the distribution list or if we even have a working email for her at this point or not, but I'm sure she's aware of it. Or maybe she's not. Maybe she'll become aware of it later today. I don't know. But
Logistically, how many people worked on this case and whatnot, would you say?
our audit?
Yes.
So when we kind of restarted the audit, we had, I would say like 5 people. Is that about right? Five between staff auditors, senior, that were kind of on the audit the whole time that we, from when it kind of got restarted. And then there's a lot of other people that support the audit later on in the audit stage. We have a quality control group that reviews it, and so there's a bunch of people that end up touching it, but there were about 5 people that were working on the audit in the field work stage and through the report drafting stage.
You broke it down by days of when she was doing her nursing degree and the clinicals. I was curious, did you break that down by hours at all?
I'm not sure I understand the question. Like what time of day?
Yeah, no, I meant like 34 days comprising of 1,200 hours.
So we looked at it in terms of like when she was in clinicals during circuit attorney's office working hours, right? So if you assume an 8-hour day, she had 29 full days, 11 half days that she missed when the circuit attorney's office was doing business that she was not there. So if you want to multiply that 34 and a half times 8, then that'll get you pretty close, 250 or 60 hours, something like that.
Did she use PTO for these days, or was she just not showing up to work?
To my knowledge, she didn't track PTO. I mean, so there were probably a lot of other days that she wasn't there when she wasn't in clinicals, but she was, these were days where we could document with certainty that she was doing something other than being at the circuit attorney's office because we had records proving that she was in clinicals. So.
And she was supposed to be in the office that day. It's not like she took a day off and then went to class.
Correct. Again, I don't believe that she was on a. I don't think there was a vacation time policy that applied to her, that she was tracking her hours, where she was punching the clock and tracking how many hours she was working and how much time she was allowed to take off. She was doing those days. There was no record of her saying, "I'm taking a vacation day." It was just she wasn't there. Where was she? She was at her clinicals. That was how it worked.
Given that she's been out of office now for almost 18 months, what do you hope kind of the city more broadly, or what is your message more broadly to the city with this audit?
Carefully select the people you put in office. Kim was a disaster, and Gabe Gore seems to be doing a good job. And You know, so the power to vote and the responsibility you have to research who you're putting in office, it can't be better highlighted than in this case, because, you know, the city has suffered immensely due to her failure to operate the office and to show up to work. And I would also say that, you know, Gabe Gore is on the right track. He's doing a lot of things well. The city is, I think, benefiting from his leadership in the circuit attorney's office, and it's obviously one of many things going on here that needed attention. But now, you know, it at least gives folks an opportunity to kind of shift their focus to the other problems that the city's dealing with, and hopefully work on getting those fixed as well. All right, thank you, everybody.